Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and today we're going to hear some stories from Michael T. Merrill. Now, Michael has a reputation for being the nicest person you could ever meet, and he's exactly that, but he's also a lot more than just a nice guy. As it turns out, he's one of the most passionate hunters I've ever actually had the chance to meet. Now, for this episode, Michael tells us about his favorite spike elk hunt in his home state of Utah. This hunt meant more to Michael than any other hunt he's ever been on, and that means something as he's been hunting his entire life. Either way, I want to thank Michael for coming on. Now let's let him tell you why this story means so much to him. All right, Mike, here we are, man. Thank you so much for joining the Hunting Stories podcast. How are you?
You bet, Michael. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, of course. It's going to be weird having a Mike and a Michael here. Hopefully we can keep each other straight. But yeah, man, I've heard great things about you. I appreciate so much that on one ask you said, absolutely, I'd love to come on and tell you some stories. So why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Awesome. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. My name is Mike Merrill, and I'm a lifelong hunter. Didn't necessarily have any mentors that were crazy into hunting growing up, but it was always a big part of my life and something that I just always had a great passion for and just loved and was drawn to. And so I've continued that. I'm 48 right now and enjoying hunting, especially with my bow, more than ever. So
that's awesome. That's amazing. And you're out of Utah, correct?
Yeah, I'm in a town called Salem, Utah. I'm about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake City or Park City, just down south.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I know that we kind of had a little back and forth on Instagram, and you already have a very specific story picked out. So why don't you kind of set the stage for us and let us know kind of when this happened, what you were hunting for, what you were hunting with, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. So this the hunt I was going to share the experience about was in 2017, so about 5 years ago now. And it was actually an archery elk hunt, and it was just an over-the-counter unit here in Utah. So not a fancy draw tag or anything too crazy, but I just barely, maybe a year or two before that, started to get really serious about bow hunting. I had bow hunted for maybe 10 years previously, but more opportunistically and mostly always for deer. And so this was one of my early chances to chase elk with my bow, and I was just really, really starting to get into it. So this was going to be my year, and that's what I kept telling myself before the season started.
That's what I tell myself before every season, I think.
Me too. And once in a while, you're right?
Wow, way less often than I'd like to be, I think.
Well, as long as you're trending the right direction, then you're doing fine.
Yeah, so you get a little bit better every year.
All right, so essentially, what happened here is I was hunting in a unit that I hadn't previously hunted before for elk. I'd hunted deer out there, and it's gotten to become a pretty decent deer unit and a limited entry unit for deer. And the state of Utah doesn't necessarily want a big elk herd out there, so it's just over the counter and it's open bull, so you could shoot any size bull that you have an opportunity at. And so originally, the first day on the opener, I went out there with my older brother. We camped over and had some trail cameras in the area, knew there were some elk around. And I'd seen even some decent bulls. So, 6 points and some 5 points, rag 4s, and, all the way down to spikes. And so we knew we were at least in the general area where some elk would be. And we got up, before the sun and hiked up to a spring and just kind of waited there, hoping that something would come in, and it never did. So about 8:30 in the morning, we thought, well, let's just hike up to the top of this ridge and glass over the other side and see if we can turn something up. So basically, we hiked for probably a good 45 minutes or an hour from there and got up to the top of this ridge, and we actually glassed up this herd of 7 bulls. And there were 4 6 points in there and then some smaller rags. But yeah, it was a, pretty decent herd, and we were super excited, but they were about 400 yards away and across another hillside. And it was a very open, deserty face. So not a lot of cover. I mean, sagebrush, not even a lot of anything for cover.
Gotcha. She probably had to loop all the way around in order to get any kind of play on these guys.
Yeah, and the thing was, I mean, I had been, I'd been listening and consuming everything I could from the Elkanut, Paul Medell. Absolutely loved Paul and Paul Jr. and just consumed everything I could with them. And I'd taken, Elk 101, University of Elk Hunting, and I'd signed up for just about every elk calling academy, just everything that I could do. Listen to podcasts, really. Just immersed myself in everything elk hunting and wanted to get serious about this. So, despite all that, we made a fatal mistake of blowing a cow call, and where we didn't have a lot of cover, and so the elk immediately identified that we were there. It definitely stopped them and bought us a lot more time, but at the end of the day, before we could get down ahead of them or get anywhere in position, they had already gone past and left the country. So.
Yeah.
We lost
it's hard to remember all of that information when you're in the moment, right?
Yeah. It's just like anything. And you hear the term buck fever or whatever, those things are real. Your adrenaline gets pumping. I mean, it's the same, you're up to bat in a baseball game, or, we're on the free throw line in a basketball game, or you're studying for a test and now it's time. You've got to give a speech or a talk or whatever it is. The nerves and the adrenaline kick in, and you forget 90% of everything you learned. And so that's what we did. So we made some mistakes and blew the elk out of there. And so we spent the rest of the day trying to guess where they would have gone and, run down ahead of them and all that. But we never could turn them up again. Couldn't find where they bedded. Just lost the herd. So we commenced the next couple days and throughout that hunt, trying to turn this herd back up, trying to catch them again. And we never could find them, never had a chance at them. Mm-hmm. So the season was winding down. And in this particular unit, it lasts a little over 3 weeks, and then they shut it down. And basically at least from archery. And so, for my work, I run a software company and do a lot of trade shows and events and, kind of work with sales and things like that. So I had a trip where I had to be out of town. I think I was in Chicago for most of the week. And so the day I was to get back, there were only 2 days left in the hunt. And so, and I'd been gone for 5 days and I was hunting before that. So I kind of eased in the conversation with my wife, like, hey, babe, kind of depending on what happens and what's going on when I get back, what do you think about me maybe just heading straight from the airport out to this elk unit? So she didn't like that idea. But, my daughter had a dance recital on Saturday. This was like the last chance I was going to have to hunt, that day. And so, it just didn't seem like it was real likely. And I said, well, okay, look, that's okay. We can talk about this later. I'm just going to pack my stuff and have it in my truck at the airport and just there. And then, depending on what happens, maybe if I can get out there, or if you're okay with it at the time, then I'll just head straight to hunt elk. And so she said, okay. Right. So
maybe if I,
right.
Piss you off a little bit, you don't want to see my face, I'll just head to the woods.
Yeah, I was the Jim Carrey. So you're telling me there's a chance. So anyway, the one in a million.
Yeah.
Anyway, my sweet wife, I give her so much credit because she knew that, I'd been, I followed Cam Haines for a long time and other hunters that I really, really looked up to and appreciated their grind and their hustle and just their diligence and their ability to just work. And so I had spent, and the season before I'd done the same, put in a ton of work, started running a couple years before and really getting in shape and hiking around with a pack on in the off season, just doing everything that I could to really be ready for this and shooting my bow every day. And so my wife had seen all this and knew that I'd put all this work in. So it came time, and there I am, on the plane, getting ready to land. And when the plane landed, I told her it landed and, okay, I'm going to make my way to my truck in the long-term parking. And anyway, she ended up telling me, you know what, babe, just go ahead and just go out and, go ahead and get your elk. And so I'm like, are you sure? Maybe I can get an elk quick and I'll be back Saturday for our daughter's dance thing. And she's like, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Just go do your thing. You've put all the work in, maybe it'll work out. So I'm just so grateful and was just so thankful that she supported and encouraged me to do that, because it was really what I wanted to do. But I had to make sure that was okay with her. I wasn't going to do it, just because I wanted to if she wasn't having it. So that's kind of how that went. Well, I get out there and I'm just hightailing it as quick as I can. I mean, I get there probably an hour before dark. I mean, I barely had time to set up my tent and, glass a little bit. Ended up setting up the tent in the dark, and, I didn't waste any time. Had a motorcycle. I took it up, as high as I could on the trail, and then busted tail up as quick as I could to get high and glass and see if I could turn something up and hope for an opportunity for something in the morning, but never ended up turning anything up. So, just, decided, all right, I'm just going to get up early in the morning and see what I can make happen. So woke up early the next morning, about an hour before light, same thing, went and rode my motorcycle up as high as I could get it on the trail, and then, started hiking up. And essentially I went back to the same area where my brother and I had been a few weeks before and seen this herd. Well, the sun came up and I couldn't see anything, and I'm blowing some different calls and, location bugle and a roundup bugle, and just trying to do different things that I'd learned and studied, and I just never could turn anything up. Now in Utah, the elk hunt is early. And so we're talking at this point, this was September 9th. And
okay.
So, rutting in some areas for sure, but
when does that season start?
So it started about the middle to like August 17th or something like that.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
Like pretty early. So they're all in the velvet at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's in the velvet. By the time you get the first week in September, some of the bigger bulls are stripping off and they're starting to rut a little bit, but I hadn't heard a bugle, not a bugle anywhere. So, I thought, well, I've never been to this particular area other than, where we stopped before. And so I just started hiking and putting boot miles in, and I hiked probably a couple more miles, found another couple of ridges and glassed some other spots. And now it's about, 10:30 in the morning. So the sun's kind of getting up high, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to turn something up soon, or else,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to really see anything moving. I mean, it's out in the desert. It's like 90 degrees at this place. So very warm.
Yeah.
And, anyway, I find this kind of cliffy area that overlooks this basin, and I could see some pretty good country, had my spotting scope and all that. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to set up on this cliff ledge and see what I can make happen, see if I can turn anything up. So I'm there, glassing. I decided to eat my lunch early, just, bored, trying to find something to do to kind of keep my mind busy while I'm, waiting for an opportunity, hopefully. And, finally it gets to be about 11:30. And now I'm thinking, okay, like this is like almost ridiculous at this point. And I'm starting to have doubts and thinking, okay, my daughter's recital's at 3:00. I'm 2 hours from my camp to the house. If I go now, like I'm starting to do the math in my head and play this out. And this happens. I mean, it's happened to me, it doesn't happen nowadays. But through my hunting career, through, all the years, many times, and it could be anything. It could be home. It could be the dance recital. It could be your wife. Maybe you're missing home. Maybe it's work. Maybe you got an email or a text that came through. Just something
want a burger,
that distracts you. Yeah, it's distracting, right?
Yep.
Or I'm sore. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm whatever it is. Or there's no elk out here. But I'm just having those thoughts creeping in, and finally I'm like, I'm not going to, I'm just going to chill and just see what happens. So every now and then I'm throwing out a cow call and, just trying to make something happen. And finally I'm sitting here thinking, okay, something's got to happen here, and I'm saying a prayer here, and I'm, well, so my mother had passed away about 6 years before from Lou
Okay.
Gehrig's disease. And so, and I did this one time like 10 years before. My dad died when I was 13, so when I was pretty young. And one time I kind of called on my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, can you send me a little buck or something? Even a little buck, even if I'm not going to shoot him, I just want some, anyway." This little buck came trotting out like 5 minutes later. So I'm like, okay, I'm laughing. I'm literally laughing to myself. Like, okay, I'm kind of being silly here, a little foofy, but whatever.
Yeah.
Right. At this point, I got nothing going. So I'm going to go there. So, I'm sitting there just talking to my mom. I'm like, "Mom, come on, can you just send me a couple spikes to play with or just something?" And I'm kind of, and then I'm trying to think about her, and I'm thinking about, just, life in general. I'm just sitting there. And then I start to realize, this is actually pretty cool. This is a really awesome place. I'm blessed to be here. What a beautiful area. I'm looking at the environment I'm in, and I'm feeling, I'm in the shade of a pine tree, and I just finished my lunch. So I'm feeling good that way. Everything's good.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing how introspective hunting is. That's something when I started hunting, I had no idea how much time you have to think, right? And it's amazing where your mind goes.
Yeah, and even it wasn't even that I was intending to be so introspective, but it was just one of those moments
It just
where
happens.
it was like, yeah, it's like, okay, like the reality of the wonderment and the awesome place I was in, and the journey that I was on, and the adventure. I was alone. Like, I didn't see another soul up there. I didn't hear anybody. Nobody was camped anywhere near me. Like, there was just me. And so anyway, I'm just sitting there, and it wasn't 5 minutes from when I'm done, or began having these kinds of thoughts. And all of a sudden I catch movement, like right in the bottom of this hill that I'm on. I'm in the very bottom. I catch movement through these trees, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, and it was far enough away, probably almost 400 yards. Like, I couldn't quite tell what it was, but I'm like, oh, it looks like an elk. And then it moves a little more, and I'm thinking that looks like a bull colored elk. And then I'm like, there's two elk. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and again, I was at this place for probably an hour and a half, and all of a sudden, this
some spikes.
Yeah, raghorn. It was kind of a spike by club. I mean, it was like a spike by 4 or something. It had kind of a knobby end on one side, and then a straight spike, and they came out together. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Is this seriously happening? Like, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, exactly what I had asked for. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, can you just send me a couple of spikes to play with?" So then I'm thinking, well, of course I'm going to try and shoot one of these elk. I got to do this, right? So
for Mom,
that's it. So I sat and waited. I made sure I didn't, make the same mistake I had weeks earlier, where I let them know where I was at, right? And so I just sat quietly and watched them, and they kind of fed up the hill and kind of moseyed up, and they went up about 2/3 the way up the next side hill. They were about 900 yards away by the time they kind of slowed down. And then I watched them, and I could see there were a couple big cedar trees, and I could see they were getting ready to bed. They were kind of walking around like a dog or something that, for those that don't know, they kind of walk around in a circle, kind of smelling the area, looking around, kind of checking things. And so sure enough, these two elk lay down. And ironically, one laid down facing one way, and the other one laid down facing the exact opposite. So now I've got, 4 eyes every direction. Right.
Yep.
I'm looking at the situation, and I'm trying to think here, and I get on my Onyx, and I'm trying to look at, elevation and the best I could. I mean, the mobile app wasn't fantastic at the time, but I could definitely kind of see what was going on and kind of plot, where I thought they were from where I was, and put a pin there. And so I just waited for them to lay down. As soon as they did, gave them a couple minutes, made sure they weren't going to move. And then I started to make my way down quietly towards them. Well, I quickly realized, I can see them. That means they can see me. So really my best bet, and I'm thinking, okay, it's like 11:30 in the morning. It's hot. They're in the shade. they're under the only trees in the general area, so they're not moving. Like they're going to be there for some time, at least 2 or 3 hours. I thought. So I hiked down exactly the opposite direction from them on the other side of the spine ridge that I was on, so that they couldn't see me. And I hiked down about 400 or 500 more yards on the backside of that. And then I went clear down another bottom that was almost, was kind of parallel with the direction they were at. And as I was plotting it out and looking, I ended up hiking almost a mile out of my way just to absolutely make 100% sure they couldn't see me or hear me, or, I just did everything I could do because I thought it's only me. There's going to be no other people. I don't think there's going to be any other, there's no hunters. This is mine to have or to screw up. And so anyway, I went all the way out of my way, and then I snuck my way back in, and one tree at a time. I just, was stealthy as I could get. And I spent about an hour doing this until I felt like I was about 200 yards below them. And I was glassing and watching, and I didn't see that they'd left. And there were points where I could see an air twitch, or could kind of see they were still there. And so I kept hiking up. Well, they were on a pretty steep hill too. So there was a point where I was going to run out of cover, but I had a little bit where the hill was still going to be in the way. So I kept going.
What time of day was this?
This was now almost, this was afternoon, probably 12:30 p.m. So sun's high. It's hot. I think it was 94 degrees at this time.
Thermal shooting uphill.
Yeah. It was, I had to move fast at this point. Right. So I ended up getting up to where I thought, okay, I felt like I was 60 yards maybe from my pin that I put and where they were. And there were these two big cedar trees. So I was fairly sure, depending on where they truly were laying in relation to those trees, that I was pretty close. So I get to where I think I'm like 60 yards. Well, I've been practicing. I mean, I like a 30, 40 yard shot if at all possible, but definitely have the ability to shoot a little further if I need to. And so I had practiced much further and felt pretty confident if I'm 60 or in or somewhere close, I'm going to be good. So I'm taking very slow steps, being very quiet, just making sure that I don't blow this up. Well, now I feel like I'm about 50 yards and I don't see these elk. And then internally, again, this is my brain. This is what our brains do. Starts, it's playing tricks on me. I'm just so ticked off. I'm like, oh my gosh, I blew them out. Like I wasted all this time, just all the negative thoughts start creeping in. I've screwed
everything
this up.
That can go wrong in your mind may happen.
I should have just, done what I naturally would do. And that's like run and gun, like, get down there as fast as I can. I'm in in 5 minutes, I'm going to be within 100 yards of these. And, that's the old me, right? That's the guy inside that can't wait to break out. That I'm fighting all the time when I'm in these situations. And so I finally calmed myself down and realized, dude, better than this. Like, like 100%, you always act like they're still there until you're standing on top of where they were and you can smell them, but you don't see them. Like I just knew that. And so once I got my composure and the frustration and anger that I was feeling welling up because I thought I had blown this final opportunity that was just like truly like a gift from heaven, it felt like, right? So
from mom, at least, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna keep sneaking up, just one step at a time. So I'm taking a step and I have a slider adjustment at this point. So I've got it at like 60 yards, and I keep going and I take a couple steps and then I 58 and I'm just, I'm guessing still at this point. Finally, I get to a certain point and all of a sudden elk stands up. It's like, oh my gosh,
no.
There it is. And it didn't know, it just sensed something. I don't think it had smelled me at that point. My wind was still okay. And which by the way, that was another thing. I definitely was making sure the wind and going the direction I went and where I went. I definitely made sure I was way far away so that the wind was better for me should it switch or swirl, which I think helped in the end. But anyway, the problem was the spike that stood up was the furthest away from me, and it was on the opposite side of this tree. So I had no shot, but I could see it. So I'm ranging it, and it was like 85 yards.
Oof.
And I know by where he stood up that the other one is between us and closer. So I take another step slowly, and the further away spike by club, kind of looking around, acting a little nervous, and then all of a sudden the other one stands up, and I hurry and range it, and he was 73 yards. And so I dial my sight back to 73 from 58 or whatever I had it at that point, because I thought I was a little closer. And I just did what I had practiced doing literally thousands of times that off season, and just let it fly. The shot broke. I actually had on my bow, I had it was like an Excel spy cam or something that was mounted on where the stabilizer goes, and I had it on play. Like, I had all the composure. Problem was, the bow, when I released it, vibrated so much. Like, you if you didn't know what was going on, you wouldn't know what was going on at that 73 yards away and uphill. But you could kind of tell what was going on, and it was pretty cool. But anyway, hit the elk great. I mean, the elk shot off and took off, and probably ran 20 yards, and then I hurried and blew a cow call, and they still didn't know what happened. They just, I don't think he knew he was hit or anything. And he stopped, and I ranged him again, and he was 75 yards. So I added 2 yards to my slider, and I laced another one and whacked him good again. And the elk went, not even 40, 50 yards from there, and piled up. And I waited and, made sure everything was good. And I think I waited at about 30 minutes at that point, but I felt like he was done for. I'd hit him good twice, could see the blood going. So I moseyed my way up slowly and found the arrow and surveyed the situation before I went over to where he was at. He was kind of over a little ridge, so he couldn't see me. Anyway, I get over there to him, and there's that other elk standing 40 yards away, just staring at me. And that elk stood there for like 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, he just didn't know what was going on. He couldn't smell me. It was pretty. He kept looking at the other elk that was laying there dead, and trying to figure out why he didn't want to get up and join him. And finally, I just kind of walked towards him slowly, and he took off. And anyway, so now I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This is everything I wanted. And
Cloud 9, ready for the hard part.
Yeah. Now the dilemma. It's 1 p.m. at this point. Okay, and the sun's, it's like 94, 95 degrees. But anyway, I knew what to do. I went to work. I quartered it up. I did the gutless method. I'd done that before, and had, studied and reviewed that before this season. I remembered a few weeks before, my wife's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, this is the gutless method." She's like, "What's that?" And I'm explaining it. She's like, "Don't you gut it and ream it out and all that?" She's going through the stuff she'd heard me talk about before. And he said, "Well, this is a little different." And she's like, "Why are you watching it now?" And I'm like, "Because I'm going to need to use this later this year. I don't want to forget anything, how to get the back straps out or the tenderloins." And so anyway, I ended up getting everything quartered up, cut up. I hung it in bags, put it in trees. There's no bears in this particular area, so I wasn't too worried about that. More, coyotes or, something like that. But anyway, started loading my pack up, getting it ready, and took the first load out, got down to the truck. It was about 6:30 p.m., got down on my motorcycle. Or actually, that first trip out, it was quicker to not go to the bike. So I just beelined straight to my truck, and then decided to hike back up. And I thought, well, I'll bring this second load to the bike and then bring the bike down. And I could tell for sure it was going to be 3 loads, heavy. because I had my gear in with the first one. So I took out the hind quarter and my gear, the first load. And then the second load, I took out a front and a hind. And
Oof.
it was
Good on
about
you.
10:30 p.m. and I'm at the top of this ridge and it's dark. Now there was a pretty full moon. So, I mean, there was some light, I'd had lamp, I was prepared, had plenty of water, but, I was tired. It was, it was tough. And again, anybody that I know, if anybody says that they aren't afraid of the dark at some point or another, I think they're probably lying, but,
Absolutely.
there was just that moment where it hit me again. And it was just like when I thought I blew the elk out, I'm thinking it's totally dark. Like, man, this is steep. And, oh, what if I twist my ankle? And all of the fear that, that just can hit you. And it's probably stuff from when I was a little kid, even, just all of a sudden it's coming out.
Yeah, there are no bears in the area, but somehow that night you thought there were bears.
That's it. Yeah, I did. I told myself, like, there's no bears. Mountain lions are not, I actually had a sidearm. I had a concealed carry permit at the time, which, here in Utah, if you had that and you, even during an archery season, you can carry a pistol. I had one, but, I don't know what I would have needed it for. So anyway, I just the same thing. It was like 2 minutes of that. And then it was like, all of a sudden it hit me again. And I'm like, wow, like I'm on the top of this freaking mountain. I'm at like 8,000 feet. I'm in this cool mountain desert. I mean, I've got a heavy pack on my back full of freaking elk meat and I couldn't be happier. Like, and I told myself, like, out loud, dude, on planet Earth, there is nowhere else I would rather be than right here, right now, tonight, doing exactly this. Like, this is literally, like, this is my dream come true. This is what I wanted. Like, you accomplished your goal. So, like, all of a sudden, this jubilation and this just this, I just felt so invigorated, and I had this positive adrenaline. And I literally, for another hour, I hiked down this steep, dark, nasty, crazy terrain, had a smile on my face so bad that my face hurt when I got down to, like, it like literally my cheeks just hurt because I was just so happy. And so I got down about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I had to drive down a couple miles to a spot where I could get cell service, called my wife, hey babe, got the second load. I'm safe. I'm going to get up at, 6:30, 7 a.m., go get the last load, and then I'll be home, by early afternoon. And so she was super excited that I got my elk, and sure enough, went up, got that last load, got the last quarter plus the head, and got my bike. One of the other interesting things, which again, this is back to the fear side of things, for whatever reason, and I had Onyx, and then I also have a Garmin Rhino 650, and for whatever reason, the pin where I put my bike was not coming up correctly on my, like, I was doing a Navigate 2, and for whatever reason, even though that's where I set it, it was still grabbed onto some other coordinate. So I had tried to hike down that night to my motorcycle, and I got down this mountain, like halfway, and realized, oh my gosh, like I am in the wrong basin. Like, this is not the right basin.
Man.
And so I would have had to hike up and over and another, it would have been easy along the ridge top if I would have just, hiked along the ridge. But I dropped down too early because this pin, I had a trail camera in another canyon, and for whatever reason, it was taking me to that pin. And so I rebooted the Rhino because I just knew once I saw this spring, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not where my bike is. So again, same thing, like fear for just a minute. And then I realized, like, hey, no big deal. Sweet. I'll get some more work in. Like, I'm fine. I don't need my motorcycle. Like, I got my legs. So I hiked all the way back to camp, and I figured it was another 1.5 miles that night that I walked with my pack, and whatever. And I thought, well, I'll just hike up in the morning to my bike and move the bike back to this other place, and then I'll hike from there. And so that's what I ended up doing, and everything was fine. But it's just those moments where you really, um, your fear or your worry or whatever it is that you fight against can take over in an instant. And if you're not careful, it will take you down a different path than the one that's going to lead you to the fulfillment and the joy and the pleasure that you've, worked so hard to achieve. Now, one last thing, and this is why, one of the things that was really, really special about this whole experience for me. I talked to you about, throwing up a prayer and trying to talk to my mom. Well, when I got my bowl cut up and ready, and I'm getting it ready to pack up, I'm like, oh, I got to cut my tag. Of course, got to cut my tag. So before I load up the meat in the pack, I cut the tag and I'm putting it on, and I go to cut the date out, and okay, it's September, and okay, it's 2017. And then I'm trying to remember which date it was. So I couldn't remember for sure because I'd been on the road. I was hunting the weekend before. I'd been on the road the whole week. I hadn't even been home. I went straight that like the date didn't even occur to me. I look on my watch and I go to cut the date, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's September 9th. Like this is the day that my mom died.
Oh, wow.
And it just hit me like this huge emotion. And, and obviously I was a sobbing mess there for a minute, but
that's a
but it
common
was like
theme
just this moment
with hunters we've had on here.
This tender mercy that I thought, oh my goodness, like I know for sure, like you could never convince me otherwise that she didn't absolutely help make sure that I was able to have this experience and feel the love that she had for me, and how proud she was of not the elk, but just accomplishing something that I worked so hard for, and that she knew that I truly, I just care so deeply for this passion. And it's not about killing, or it's not even about just meat, or it's just this whole process and experience of taking advantage of the blessings that I feel like God has given to us to enjoy the bounty of the land that he's blessed us with, mm-hmm. and to work by the sweat of our brow, and to provide for our family by working hard and being diligent and putting in effort and doing things that weren't easy and sacrificing. And it just, all this culmination of all these things in that moment when I went to cut that tag, to have that be the moment, it just meant so much more than if I had been thinking, hey mom, this is your anniversary of your death date. Can you help me out here? Like there was none of that. It was just a true moment of love and adoration that I have for my mother, and gratitude that I have that she's always looked out for me and provided for me and loved me and cared for me. And I just felt like, her hand was, absolutely involved in me having this experience. And so it's, even today after that, lots of successful hunts and all kinds of other wonderful experiences, but nothing else like that. Nothing that has meant so much to me as that experience at that time.
That's a beautiful story, Mike. That's really beautiful, man. Can I ask, what is your mother's name?
Yeah, her name is Annetta, ANN, capital ETTA, and she is named after her mother and another ancestor. So
that's beautiful. I'll tell you what, I don't think I'm ever to go another September 9th because I know I'm going to be in the Elkwoods without thinking of Annetta at this point. So this is cool. Thank you for sharing that story. It obviously means a lot to you. That's exactly what we're going for here.
Well, that's awesome. And I have never shared that, all those details and all of that. I've shared the story of that elk hunt a few times here and there and on some podcasts, but yeah, the details of how that all came to be, and kind of the order. And again, I think back, my wife was so kind and selfless to just, support me in that, even though it was like, not probably what she wanted most, but she felt like it was something I'd worked for, and she wanted to give that opportunity to me, and then have have this experience with my mother. And actually at that time, so that's the first elk that I had ever killed with my bow also. So, killed a lot of elk before that, but always with the rifle. At that point, I hadn't been archery elk hunting previous to that. So that was even more special in that way for me.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing, man. Like I said, September 9th is going to be, I think, something special to some people that hear this story, because I could feel the emotions that you were having there. It wasn't just about putting down an animal. There's more to it for that story for you. I don't want to just jump to the next story or see if you even have another story, but I know you did put down a black bear this year. Do you want to share that story, or
Sure,
do you have any other ones that you have in mind?
The black bear one would be fun. So I have hunted black bears a couple of times in the past, but only in the state of Idaho and back with a rifle. I didn't. This was like 20 years ago, or a very long time ago. In Utah, to get they have some over the counter bear opportunities, but not very many, and we don't have a lot of bears here. So I had 10 points when I drew this permit. A long time waiting for this particular opportunity, but I have a nephew that has dogs. He's Lone Tree Outfitters is his name. Brady Lovelace is his personal name, but Brady took me out with his dogs, and we went out, and he and I just on foot hiked actually quite a ways. We hiked, I don't know, a pile of 5 or 6 miles probably. Tracking and looking for tracks, and we found tracks, and eventually found some tracks that looked, within the last day or two. And so he got his dogs on those, and they milled around and ended up eventually cutting a fresh track. So they ended up running that bear around a little bit, and the interesting thing was, so this was actually the first day that I went out on my tag. Oh. So that was
10 years of waiting in your first day, right?
Yeah. And I actually had a mountain lion hunt a couple of years before, and we treed 4 different lions, and I didn't end up shooting any of them. The first one was a good tom, but not a great tom. And I'd waited for many years for that one too. So I wanted to get a big tom. And then we treed 3 females in a row. And even though one of them was huge, I didn't want to shoot a female. So, so I didn't end up tagging out on that particular hunt. But I learned from that one, like, yeah, if we get a good bear in a tree, like I'm not going to pass up on it. So
what do they say? If you shooted them the last day, you probably should shoot them.
That's the rule, but I'm not very good at keeping that rule. So I tend to let a lot of stuff run, but that's all good. So at this point, we're watching the dogs work, and he's like, hey, I think they're getting them corralled up or bait up, or I'm not sure he's in a tree or not, but it seems like the way they're acting, like they're getting something going here. So we had gotten clear up to the top of this. I mean, we probably, like I said, probably 5 miles top of this ridge, and the dogs ended up getting on something basically probably about 1.5 miles down from where we were at. So like opposite direction kind of. So we start making a beeline. It took us about 30 minutes to get down to where the dogs were. And as soon as we got down there, that bear had turned around and ran right back up, and it was probably within 200 yards of where we just were. So it took us another hour to get back up to where we were. That took us 30 minutes to get down. And so anyway, sure enough, they had a bear in a tree. And so I got up there as quick as I could. And I knew pretty quick, he had big head on him, big mature bear. And they're just coming out of their dens at this point. So not fat and huge, like they would be in the fall, but I could tell
beautiful
he was a mature boar and a good one, and beautiful, pretty black color. I mean, super black. And we get a lot of color phase bears around here, which are awesome also, but this one's, really, really a pretty bear. And so, yeah, I got my bow drawn back, and just same thing as with that elk, just practice what I'd practiced so many times before. I mean, we were talking before about the elk-shaped camps that we went to, and I had received some incredible instruction from actually a couple of the world's best. And you know who I'm talking about, Joel Turner
Yes,
with
sir.
IQ. And then also a good friend of mine, Wayne Endicott, that owns the bow rack up in Springfield, Oregon. Wayne had fletched me up some arrows, and then he also did a bow tune on my bow. We found out, and this is this is interesting to me and almost shocking, but I think this might be good for your listeners. So my draw length, when I went up to that elk-shaped camp, and for the last 20 years, 30 and a half inches. So that's 30 to 30 and a half, right in there somewhere, right? So that's, I've had 5 different bows. That's what they've all been. Anyway, I'm there at the bow rack. He's fletching me these arrows, and I shoot a couple, and Wayne Endicott's watching, and he's like, I think your draw length's a little longer than what you are set at. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, serious? So we get looking at it, and he's like, yeah. And so he goes, let me take this back. And so he gets his bow tech in there, and they dial this thing back a little bit. They lengthen it out, and he gets me to 31. And he's like, all right, try it now. So I shoot it. I'm like, oh, it feels a little better. He's like, oh, you're still just a little bit bunched up. I'm like, really? And I'm thinking, I don't know how many tens of thousands of arrows I've shot. And I've shot in front of all kinds of people and with all kinds of people. And I mean, I've never had truly professional instruction like this, but he's like, yeah, you might be an inch longer. And I'm thinking, oh, there's no way I'm 32-inch draw, but that's just my brain, right? I'm like 5'10", 5'11". I'm not tall.
Oh, you got those monkey arms.
I have really long arms. I do.
Yeah.
But so he lengthens it out again. He gets it to 31 and a half inches. And I draw my bow back, and I'm like, that feels nice. Like, it felt nice. And he's like, oh yeah, you look good. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So we start shooting, and I'm shooting through paper, and man, this thing starts shooting bullets, and it's just looking awesome. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nuts, right? This is like, this is the day before, later. This is like the day before elk-shaped camp in Oregon starts, right? And I had gone to the Utah camp, and I was shooting with this 30 and a half inch draw length. So it was different, but anyway, so get the bow really in a great spot. It is just firing awesome. I'm shooting great. Then we get there to elk-shaped camp. Joel Turner spent some time with me, and, I'd already been doing some work on the trigger stuff and not punching. And by the way, for all y'all listening, most of you, like 98% of you, are punching your trigger, even though you don't think you are. I didn't think I was. He videoed it from like 3 inches away, and he's like, oh, you slapped that sucker. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm looking at the same video he is. I'm thinking, no, that was perfect. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And so what I had in my brain, and what I've pictured when I hear the word punch your trigger, I had something envisioned that was different than what Joel Turner would describe as punching a trigger. So once I clearly understood and, got my release length more aligned properly, got my draw length how it was supposed to be, had Joel Turner there to coach me through this, it was like, oh my gosh, wow. Like almost for the first time in my life, truly, truly, truly a surprise release. And I was money. Like, the shooting was I was just shooting tacks.
Yeah.
Like I've never, I'm a fair shot and have been a good shot, but not all entirely consistent. And that is why. And so after applying Wayne's feedback, having him fix my bow and get it right, having him teach me that a comfortable shot is an accurate shot, I was like spreading my legs like I was a baseball player, like I was, Sammy Sosa, getting ready to, jack one over the wall 500 feet. That's the way I'm like gearing up to. I was a big baseball player, love baseball. And, I'm feeling like I'm getting in the stance to shoot my bow. And Wayne's like, no. Just get comfortable. Just stand normal, like shoulder width apart. And it's like, now when I'm shooting my bow, like I feel like chill, like I'm good. There's no tenseness. There's no it's fluid. It just feels right. And so
Yeah.
anyway, back to the bear hunt. So
Well,
having gone
let me say
through,
real quick. I've shot with Joel Turner as well. I have an advantage over what I think you 20-year bow shooters have, which is like I'm brand new and I have not shot my bow where I didn't know Joel Turner existed. So, but he does great work. And not only that, to everyone listening, go to a Joel Turner clinic because he will help you there and he will help you after the fact. I've sent Joel many messages being like, I don't know what's going wrong with this. I'm not punching the trigger. I know where we're at this point, and he will give you feedback based on where your shot is going, and help you bring it all together. So Joel, I can't say enough about Joel Turner. Hopefully I get him on the podcast at some point. I know he's super busy since he just retired from police and is now doing Shot IQ 100%. But hopefully we get him out here eventually.
yeah, and I feel the same. I mean, Joel, and he knows this. Like I put it right to the edge of almost creepy. Like, okay, Joel knows how much. Joel knows how much I love Joel now. Like he's just like, whoa. I'm like, dude, no, you don't understand. And he's like, yeah, no. I'm so glad. I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. Like you literally changed my life. And he's like, I know you hear this all the time, but I'm not used to having my life changed by a shot coach. And you just did that. So thank you for saving me thousands of hours and hundreds of arrows and a lot of heartbreak and heartache from, missing animals that I really shouldn't be missing because I didn't have this stuff dialed in when I thought I did. And so anyway,
Absolutely.
Shot IQ. And then Elk Collective, if you sign up for the Elk Collective, which by the way, I did that entire course in less than a month. There's 110 lessons. I think they're adding more and more now. I don't know. It's like 50, 60 hours, but I did it nights, weekends, every spare moment after the elk shape camps. And that is because I wanted to sear on my brain all of the goodness that I had just learned at those elk shape camps and that Joel had helped me with, and Tree Line Pursuits with Mark Livesay, and Iron Will Bill, and Jared Lyle with Hunt and Fool, and all of these incredibly knowledgeable people that, regardless of your experience or your history or how many years you've been up on the mountain chasing animals with whatever weapon, I just had all of this knowledge injected into me these last few months from these experiences. So all of that culminated to here I am below this tree where this bear is, and just released just a perfect arrow. It hit exactly where I needed it to. That bear didn't know what happened, and as I look back at the video, 9 seconds from when I released that arrow, that bear fell dead. Never even, didn't know what happened at all, and it was just wonderful. So great experience, and just so thankful again. And I texted the video and some pictures to Wayne Endicott, and then I also sent it to Joel Turner and said, and Joel talks about, and I'm sure you'll remember this, that moment when he switched from, recognizing the difference in the shot that he releases on an animal and the animals that he releases the arrow properly, right? And doesn't punch the trigger, those animals, the taxidermy ends up in the house. if something's punched or done wrong, it's a Euro mount in the garage. So I told Joel that bear gets to come and be a rug in my house, and I earned that, and so I had him to thank for it. So
that's awesome, Mike. That's great, man.
Anyway,
well, cool.
So that bear, we quartered that up. We got the back straps, we got some neck meat. I filled that pack and I packed that entire bear out in one load, and it was heavy and good, but that's what we trained for. So even though it was just March, April time period, I was in shape and ready because I, just learned to train year round for this kind of stuff. And so that was another great opportunity. And yeah, thanks for bringing up that bear hunt. That was a lot of fun.
Of course, man. I've only been aware of your existence for a few months, but I know that you train and that you work hard, sir. Like I said earlier, but I think before we started recording, I was asking about your fletchings and how you repair them, because you shoot straight and you work hard. And so I'm glad that we were able to talk with you today, bud. I don't know if you have any additional stories that you want to tell. Otherwise, if not, then we can go ahead and let the people know where to find you. So your choice here.
Yeah, I can save some more stories for another day. I think the nice way I'd like to wrap up is, for any of you out there, number one, I know, some of you guys have probably been hunting as long as me or longer, probably far more successful or maybe not at all at this point in terms of notching tags. But whatever the case is, we're all in this together. We need to support and encourage one another. We need to mentor each other and help other people out, because we're all trying to protect this passion and this pursuit that we all love so much. And there are things that are threatening to it right now that are happening politically and within our communities, and within, government and other overreach that seems to be happening. And so I think the biggest thing is, let's help one another out. Let's support each other. Who cares what weapon people want to use? Who cares what, if people like trail cameras or don't, or if they hunt with dogs, or if they hunt on bait, or, or if they do public land or high fence or private, like, it doesn't matter. We all are hunting an experience, and whatever that fulfillment looks like for you, I think that's fantastic. And I think if you're actively participating in that process and not killing animals with your wallet by paying Walmart or, the local meat market to retrieve that protein, then I think you're awesome. Like you're doing better than 95% of everybody else to participate in that. So I just want to encourage people to lift each other up and support one another the best you can. Help a guy out if you've got someone that you can help mentor or give advice to. Remember, at least for me, I'm only competing against myself. Like, I just want to be a better me today than I was yesterday. And tomorrow I'm going to do even better. Like, that's the attitude and the approach that I try and take. And some days are not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall short. You're going to miss. You're going to wound an animal and you may not find it. That's all a part of hunting. And regardless of where you find yourself in these different situations, I just hope that you can take a step back and recognize that it's a blessing that we have this opportunity to participate in this, and that we've been given, especially in the United States, we've been given these freedoms to pursue these passions. And so let's protect them and protect those who also, like you, are passionate about them. And remember that, tearing someone else down is never going to lift you up. It's like crabs in a bucket. You're just going to pull each other down. And we just don't have time for that. And, for those that want to do that, they can go and beat the tar out of each other if they want, but I'm going to be doing something else, trying to lift someone else up if I can.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. You, Mr. Positivity here. Mike, you're 100% correct. But why don't we tell the people where they can find you? And if you have anything that you want to mention as far as like how people can get more involved with the things that are going on in the hunting community right now, share that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Michael. So you can find me mostly on Instagram. I'm in Facebook and all that, Twitter. I post through those things too, but usually I'm real active on Instagram, and you can just find me under Michael T. Merrill, and it's spelled just like it sounds. And pretty active there, and I do get lots of questions and all kinds of different people that I try and interact or help out with. Sometimes it's I'm not a fitness expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a professional archer. I'm not the best hunter that there ever was, but I do have some ideas and some things that work for me. And I'm always happy to try and help others to at least, hear some of those thoughts if they're interested, or if they're looking for some advice and direction. I have others who do the same for me. So I think the best advice I could give anybody is, YouTube is a great free resource. Look up some of these elk hunts, look up things like Elk Shape, sign up for some of these things like, again, the Elk Collective, or Tree Line Pursuits Academy. That thing is incredible for e-scouting.
Is amazing.
There's so much goodness there, and you can do it from your couch in your living room. You can't really do it from your tent like the day before opening day on the hunt. So, spend some time in the off season, just like you would for anything, right? Like I mean, people go to school for 8 or 10 years to become a doctor, right? Like that's a full-time deal to try and learn that craft. Hunting is a craft. It's a skill. It can be learned. You don't have to be the most gifted athletically. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room to figure some of this stuff out. But you do have to put yourself out there a little bit. One of the things that I love doing every year, I like going to the Total Archery Challenge events, or Mountain Archery Fest, or some of these other events, these 3D bow shoots, because you're going to run into people that I ended up shooting one time with Iron Will Bill. I'd never met him before. I'd heard about his broadheads, but I just got paired up with him and ended up spending a whole day on the mountain with him shooting bows. And man, what a incredible man, what a knowledgeable expert in all these things that I'm passionate about. So if you go and get involved in some of these events, go to the Hunt Expo in Salt Lake City, or go to some of these industry trade events and rub shoulders with people that have these same passions that either you have or you would like to have. And I think you're going to find there's a lot of guys that are out there willing to help out. And the information is everywhere. It's almost overload. I mean, you really almost have to be careful at, how much you consume and who you really look to. But more than just going out there listening to 800 podcasts, like put some of this into action. Don't go read all the self-help books, but never put it into practice. Like, start putting things into practice and learn through your own experience. And then that's what's going to help you quicker than anything else you can read or listen to on a podcast or on a YouTube channel. So
that's right, Mike. That was the perfect way to end it, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thanks for having me. We'll catch up with you again down the road. And if I get out your way in Colorado, I'll ring you up.
Of course. Thank you. All right, guys. That's it. Another story in the books. If you have any feedback, please let us know. Just go to @huntingstories_official on Instagram and DM us. And, while you're there, don't forget to follow. And now I want to thank Michael again for sharing his stories with us. He trains as hard as anyone, and his passion really does come through with everything that he does. So don't forget to follow him on Instagram. It's @MichaelTMerrill. Really, this guy lifts, runs, shoots every day to train. It's super inspirational, and I highly recommend that you follow him. And of course, while you're following things, don't forget to subscribe, review, comment on your preferred podcast app, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or Stitcher, whatever it is you may use, but help us grow the podcast. You can also do that by sharing the podcast with your friends and family, and thank you very much for doing exactly that. Now finally, we're always looking for more storytellers. So if you, your dad, your friend, your mom, whomever has a good story, hit us up on Instagram. We want to hear from every kind of hunter. That's duck hunters, deer hunters, goose hunters, squirrel hunters, as long as you can tell a good story. Thanks again for listening. Now go make some stories of your own.